The sky was red with burning clouds, and the ground shook with the roars of monsters that ruled the night. She moved silently through the dark forest, her steps light, her body ready to strike. She was a death worlder, born on a planet where danger never slept. Every day was a fight for survival, and only the strongest lived to see another sunrise. She believed she was among the strongest, her body scarred by battles, her mind trained to never fear anything. No creature in this world could surprise her, or so she thought. Her sharp eyes caught something strange on the ground. Footprints. Not the marks of any predator she knew, not claws, not heavy paws, not the slithering trail of serpents. These were different. Long, flat impressions, too neat, too deliberate. She crouched down, pressing her hand against the soil near the mark. Whoever made this had walked calmly, without fear, without rushing. No one in this land walked calmly. Every step here was supposed to be careful, tense, or desperate. Her lips tightened. A hunter, maybe? A stranger from the stars? Her heart quickened, but not with fear, with curiosity and the hunger to know. She followed the trail deeper into the forest, past trees with thorned bark and vines that dripped with poison. The sound of distant howls carried on the wind, but the steps she tracked never changed direction, never faltered. Whoever it was had walked straight into the heart of the forest, as if they owned it. She clenched her spear tighter. No alien, no outsider, could survive this place. Yet the marks told her someone had. The path ended at the edge of a clearing lit by the glow of molten lava streams that cut across the land. There, standing alone, was a figure. He was tall, upright, his form outlined by the red light. He wore no protective armor, no exosuit, only simple coverings on his body. His skin was strange, smooth, pale compared to her kind. His face was calm, his eyes scanning the deadly world around him with the ease of someone taking a walk in a safe garden. She froze, her breath caught in her chest. A human. She had heard of them, weak creatures from a small blue planet. Stories said they were fragile, slow, and soft. Yet here one stood, alive in the most dangerous place in the galaxy. Her instincts screamed to attack, to prove this was not real. To end the illusion before it made her doubt herself. She stepped forward, her spear raised, her body tense. He turned his head slowly, his gaze meeting hers. There was no fear in his eyes, no sign of panic. He simply looked at her, as though he had been expecting this moment all along. His calmness unsettled her more than the sight of any predator. Predators roared, predators charged. This human only stood still, breathing evenly, waiting. Her voice was low, sharp like a blade. "You should be dead." The words slipped from her before she could stop them. She needed to hear them aloud, to remind herself of the truth. No human could live here. No one weaker than her people could last even a night. Yet the man only tilted his head slightly, as if her words amused him. His lips curved in the faintest smile, a calm smile that made her grip her weapon harder. He was not afraid of her spear. He was not afraid of this world. That frightened her more than any beast ever had. The silence between them was heavy, filled only by the rumble of distant quakes and the hiss of lava flows. She expected him to speak, to explain, to beg, but he said nothing. Instead, he reached down, picked up a jagged stone, and tossed it toward her feet. It landed near her boots, glowing faintly from the heat it had absorbed. A simple action, meaningless at first, but it was the way he did it. So calm, so controlled, that made her chest tighten. He was showing her he had no fear of her. He was showing her he belonged here as much as she did. She wanted to shout, to demand answers, but her throat closed. Her heart pounded faster than in any battle she had fought. Every scar on her body told a story of struggle, of survival, of blood spilled in the dirt. Yet this human, untouched and unscarred, stood as if the world itself bent around him. For the first time in her life, she felt small. She, a death worlder, shaken by the presence of someone she had always believed to be fragile. Her spear lowered slightly, though her hands trembled. He took a slow step toward her, his movements steady, unhurried. Each step was deliberate, echoing in her mind louder than the beasts howling in the distance. She did not move. She could not. Her instincts battled within her, attack or flee, but neither seemed right. She only stared, her world twisting inside out with each breath he took. He stopped a few feet away, his eyes never leaving hers. Finally, his voice broke the silence, calm and steady like the rest of him. "This world is not yours alone." The words struck her harder than any blow. Simple words, yet filled with certainty, with challenge, with something deeper. Her chest tightened as the meaning sank in. She had always believed her kind were unmatched, the rulers of this cursed land. But now, staring into the eyes of this human, she realized something she had never considered. Perhaps she was not the strongest. Perhaps the galaxy's most dangerous survivor was standing right in front of her. The ground trembled again, louder this time, as if the world itself agreed. She clenched her teeth, but the spear in her hands felt heavier, less certain. Her pride told her to fight, but her heart whispered another truth. Her world had just changed, and nothing would ever be the same again. She could not stop staring at him. The idea that a human stood alive on her death world burned in her mind like fire. Her people always told stories that humans were soft, weaker than children, too fragile to handle even the smallest predator of her world. Yet, here he was, breathing calmly, as if the poison-filled air was nothing, as if the heat of the lava fields was only a breeze. She wanted to believe it was a trick, that he would fall soon, that his body would collapse like every weak creature before him. But he did not. His steady eyes only made her anger rise. She tightened her grip on the spear. If he lived, she needed to know why. If he survived here, she had to prove he was not stronger than her. Pride burned hotter than the rivers of fire around them. She stepped closer, her voice sharp. If you are truly alive, then fight me. Her heart pounded in her chest, not with fear, but with something she had never felt before. It was a hunger to test herself, to break the calm mask this strange human wore. He did not answer. His silence cut deeper than any blade. His lack of fear insulted her, mocked her. She rushed forward, her spear flashing in the red light of the sky, sharp enough to pierce stone. She aimed for his chest, wanting to see his calm face break in pain. But in one smooth movement, he shifted aside. The spear missed by inches, the tip striking only air. Her eyes widened. He had not blocked, he had not attacked. He had only stepped away, like a leaf drifting in the wind. Her teeth clenched as she spun and struck again, faster, harder. Each thrust of the spear was a storm, each strike a roar of power. But every time she lunged, he moved with a strange rhythm, always one step ahead, always just out of reach. His movements were not like a fighter of her people. They were simple, almost lazy, yet they carried a strange precision. He made no wasted motion. He let her rage fill the space between them, while he stayed calm, untouched. Frustration built in her chest. She was a death worlder, trained since birth to kill beasts larger than mountains, to fight predators that swallowed whole tribes. How could a human, a creature of flesh without claws or armor, dance around her so easily? She growled, her voice echoing through the clearing. "Fight me! Stop running!" His eyes finally narrowed, and his lips parted. His voice was calm, low, but heavy enough to silence her heart. "Why should I fight you? The world itself is already trying to kill us." His words froze her in place. He did not raise a weapon. He did not strike. Yet his truth felt like a blade piercing through her pride. She hesitated, her body trembling, her spear lowering slightly. The hesitation nearly killed her. From the shadows beyond the clearing, a roar shook the earth. The ground split, and a predator burst forth, a monster covered in armored scales, its eyes glowing like fire. Its fangs dripped with acid, and its claws scraped the ground, leaving sparks behind. It was one of the great hunters of her world, a beast that even her people feared to face alone. She raised her spear in instinct, ready to fight, ready to prove her strength, but the human was already moving. He grabbed her arm and pulled her aside just as the beast lunged. The creature's massive jaws snapped shut where she had stood a heartbeat before. She ripped her arm free, glaring at him, but before she could speak, he shouted one word, sharp and commanding. "Move!" They split, circling the predator from opposite sides. She expected him to fall, to be crushed under its claws. But to her shock, he did not run blindly. He moved with speed, weaving between the beast's strikes, always watching, always calculating. His eyes studied the monster like a puzzle, not a threat. He picked up stones and hurled them with accuracy, striking its eyes to distract it, buying her seconds to strike. His aim was perfect. Each throw landed where it would hurt the beast most. Her blood burned with adrenaline. She attacked with her spear, slashing across the creature's leg, drawing green blood that hissed on the ground. The beast roared, whipping its tail toward her, but again the human acted. He leapt forward, grabbing a broken branch hardened by the lava's heat, and jammed it into the creature's mouth before its jaws could close around her. She gasped, stunned at his recklessness, stunned at his strength. His body strained, muscles shaking, but he held long enough for her to drive her spear deep into the beast's eye. The monster screeched in pain, thrashing wildly, and finally collapsed into the molten cracks with a hiss that echoed across the forest. She fell to her knees, her chest heaving, her skin burning from the heat and acid spray. Her hands shook as she pulled her spear free, coated in the blood of the predator. She looked up, and there he stood, breathing hard but steady, his face still calm. He had no scars, no wounds, only dirt and sweat. Her mind spun. He had saved her. A human, someone she believed weaker than dust, had stood between her and death. Her people would never believe this. She barely believed it herself. He looked at her, his eyes steady, and for the first time in her life, she felt something crack inside her chest. It was not fear, not anger, but something far more dangerous. It was doubt. She lowered her spear completely now, her pride wounded deeper than her flesh. She wanted to scream at him, to tell him he should not exist here, but the words would not come. The silence stretched, and only the burning world around them spoke. He had not fought her when she demanded it, yet he had fought for her when death struck. That was strength she had never seen before, and it shook her more than any battle she had ever fought. Her body ached from the battle, her arm bleeding where the beast's claw had grazed her, and her legs trembling from exhaustion. She tried to stand tall, tried to show no weakness, but her vision blurred, and her knees buckled. The world around her swayed with firelight and shadows. She had never allowed herself to fall in front of anyone, but this time her body betrayed her. She collapsed against the blackened ground, her spear slipping from her hand. She expected the human to leave her there, to vanish into the forest and let her weakness finish her. That was the way of her people. Only the strong survived, and no one carried the weak. But she felt strong arms catch her before she hit the ground. She blinked in shock, her breath caught in her throat. The human lifted her as if she weighed nothing, his grip steady, his pace unhurried as he carried her through the ash-filled night. Her chest tightened with anger and confusion. Why would he help her? Why would someone she had tried to kill moments ago now protect her like she was worth saving? The forest roared around them with the cries of predators drawn to the scent of blood. She expected him to stumble, to panic under the weight of carrying her while danger closed in. Instead, he moved with purpose, his eyes sharp, his steps sure. He seemed to know where to place his feet, which paths avoided the poisonous roots, which rocks would not crumble beneath them. It was as if the deadly world itself whispered secrets to him. They reached a sheltered canyon where lava had cooled into black stone walls. The air here was thick but calm, away from the eyes of prowling monsters. He set her down gently against the wall, then knelt beside her. Without a word, he tore fabric from his own clothing and pressed it against her bleeding wound. She hissed, ready to push him away, but his hands were steady, his touch firm but careful. He worked as though he had done this 100 times before. "Stay still," he said quietly, his voice carrying no command, only certainty. She hated how her body obeyed, how her eyes followed his every move. He used the simplest tools, stones heated in the fire, plants she had never considered useful, ash mixed with water to stop the bleeding. She had always believed her people knew every secret of survival here. But the human showed her things she had never imagined. He used the world not with strength, but with cleverness. When he was done, her wound was bound, the pain dulled. She stared at the rough bandage and then at him, her pride boiling inside. She should not have needed his help. She should have been strong enough on her own. Yet without him, she knew she would have bled until the beasts came for her. He did not boast, did not smile, did not ask for thanks. Instead, he began building a shelter. With stones, branches, and earth, he made walls that blended with the canyon, a roof that kept the ash from falling. His movements were quiet but efficient, each choice precise. She watched in silence, her heart unsettled. He was not stronger than her in muscle, but he survived with patience, with ideas, with a kind of power she had never seen. As the fire crackled inside their small shelter, she finally spoke, her voice sharp though weaker than before. "Why did you save me?" The question had burned in her chest since he first pulled her from the predator's jaws. He looked at her, his eyes calm. Because leaving you would make me less human. The answer struck her like a spear. She did not fully understand it, but the weight of his words pressed against her heart. Her people abandon the weak. Always. Mercy was considered foolishness. Yet this man spoke of it as if it was his greatest strength. She turned her face away, angry at the warmth spreading inside her chest. Hours passed, and the deadly night outside howled with storms and creatures. But within the walls of the shelter, there was silence, broken only by the crackling of the fire. She felt her eyelids grow heavy, her body surrendering to rest for the first time in days. She should have feared sleeping beside him, a stranger, an enemy. Instead, she felt the strange pull of safety. Her last thought before darkness took her was that perhaps he was not weak at all. Perhaps he was the most dangerous creature she had ever met, not because he killed, but because he saved. When morning came, the air was cold, and the fires of the sky burned softer. She opened her eyes and found him already awake, sharpening a piece of stone into a blade, his gaze scanning the horizon. He looked tired, but there was no sign of surrender in his posture. He had watched through the night, guarding her as she slept. Her chest tightened again, though she tried to hide it by sitting up quickly. Her body still hurt, but the bandage held, and the strength was slowly returning. She gripped her spear, looking at him from the corner of her eye. She had spent her whole life believing her people were the strongest, the rulers of survival, the unmatched children of a death world. Yet this one human, fragile in body but unbroken in spirit, had carried her, healed her, and built safety from nothing. He had done what none of her kind would ever do. For the first time, doubt wrapped around her heart like chains. Maybe her people were not the strongest. Maybe strength was not only about claws, speed, and killing. Maybe strength was something else, something this human carried in his calm eyes and steady hands. And the thought scared her more than any monster of her world ever had. The fire burned low, its glow painting the black stone walls in shades of orange. She sat with her back against the wall, her spear resting beside her, her wound aching but stable. He sat across from her, sharpening the stone blade he had carved, his hands steady, his face calm. The silence stretched between them, heavy, full of questions she did not want to ask but could not keep buried. Finally, she broke it, her voice rough, almost a growl. "How can you survive here? This world kills everything." He looked up, his eyes steady as always. "Because I learned long ago that the world never stops trying to kill us. Not just this world, any world." His words confused her. "What do you mean? Your world is weak, soft. That is why they call you fragile." For the first time, he gave a small laugh, not mocking but tired. "You think Earth was soft? We had storms that tore cities apart, oceans that swallowed thousands, mountains that shook and buried everything beneath them. Diseases that spread like fire, invisible but deadly. And worse than all of that, humans fighting humans. War, hunger, cruelty. We were always fighting to survive, every single day." She blinked, her mind struggling to accept his words. His tone was not boastful, not proud, but calm, like someone stating a truth carved in stone. She had always imagined humans as weak because their bodies lacked claws, their skin lacked armor, their movements seemed slow. But the way he spoke of his world made her chest tighten. Maybe weakness was not in the body. Maybe it was something else. "You lived in a place like this?" she asked, her voice softer than she intended. He shook his head. "No, your world is worse, but the lessons are the same. Survival isn't about being the strongest, the fastest, or the fiercest. It's about refusing to stop. It's about adapting, learning, never giving up. That's what it means to be human." The words struck her deeper than any blade. Refusing to stop, never giving up. She thought of her people, who abandoned the injured, who killed the weak without hesitation. To them, strength was only the ability to crush others. But here sat a human, someone she had called fragile, who believed strength was found in protecting, in enduring, in standing again and again, no matter how many times the world tried to break him. Her pride pushed back, desperate to hold on. "But your body is weak. You cannot fight like us. You cannot hunt like us." His gaze sharpened, his voice calm but heavier now. "Maybe, but I don't need to be like you. I find my own way. Humans always do. We use what we have, our hands, our minds, our fire, and when we fall, we stand again. That is why I'm here. That is why I'm alive. She clenched her fists, her heart pounding. His words tore through the walls she had built her entire life. She had been taught since childhood that her kind were unmatched, the true rulers of survival. Yet this man, with his calm eyes and simple tools, had walked through her death world and lived. She looked at the bandage on her arm, made from his shirt, from herbs she had never thought useful. He had healed her with nothing but cleverness. She thought of the beast they had fought, how he had thrown stones with perfect aim, how he had saved her life without hesitation. Each memory pressed against her pride, breaking it piece by piece. She tried to speak, but her throat tightened. Instead, she stared at him, searching for weakness. But all she saw was the quiet strength of someone who had endured far worse than she could imagine. His body might be soft, but his spirit felt harder than steel. The fire cracked between them, sending sparks into the air. She whispered, barely loud enough to hear herself. Maybe you are not fragile. He smiled faintly, not in victory, but in quiet understanding. Fragile things break, but humans, we bend, we bleed, we suffer. And still, we keep moving. That is our strength. The silence that followed was different now. Not heavy, not hostile, but strange. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the weight of everything shifting inside her. Her whole life, she had believed she understood strength. She thought it was about fearlessness, about killing, about never showing weakness. But this human had shattered that belief with simple words, with actions that proved mercy and endurance were stronger than cruelty and pride. Her chest ached with something she could not name. It was not anger, not fear, but a deep unease, like standing on the edge of a cliff with the ground breaking beneath her feet. For the first time, she did not know if her people were truly the strongest. For the first time, she wondered if strength had been in front of her all along, wearing a calm face and human eyes. The night deepened, and the cries of predators echoed from beyond the canyon. She should have been afraid, but she wasn't. The human sat by the fire, awake, watching, his hand resting near the sharpened stone blade he had made. She leaned back against the wall, closing her eyes, though her thoughts stormed inside her. The last thing she saw before sleep took her was his steady figure, unbroken, guarding her. And in the silence of her dreams, she admitted the truth she could not say aloud. Her world was not as unshakable as she had believed. The human had shattered it, and she did not know if she wanted to piece it back together. The sun had barely risen when the air filled with the sound of footsteps. She woke instantly, her spear in hand, her body tense. The human was already on his feet, his eyes sharp, his stone blade ready. From the shadows of the canyon, figures emerged, her people. Warriors, armed with jagged spears and armor made from the bones of predators, their faces hard with suspicion and rage. They had followed her trail. They had found her. The leader stepped forward, his voice cold. You are alive, but you are not alone. His eyes moved to the human, and his lips curled in disgust. A human? You shame us. Her chest tightened. She knew what was coming before the words were spoken. The leader pointed his spear at her. Kill him. Prove you are loyal, or you are no longer one of us. Her throat went dry. She had expected this, yet standing there, with the human at her side, the demand cut deeper than any wound. Her people did not forgive betrayal. To them, mercy was weakness. To them, survival meant loyalty to the tribe above all else. If she refused, she would be hunted, cast out, killed. She glanced at the human. He stood still, calm, his eyes steady on her. He did not raise his blade against her people. He did not prepare to fight her. He simply stood as if ready to accept whatever came next. Her heart pounded in her chest. He was not even afraid to die. The leader's voice thundered again. Do it. Kill the weak creature. End this shame. The other warriors pounded their spears against the ground, the sound echoing like drums of war. Their eyes burned with anger, demanding her obedience. Her hands trembled as she lifted her spear. Every instinct told her to strike, to survive, to obey the tribe. Her pride screamed that this was her chance to prove herself again. But another voice whispered inside her. The voice she had heard by the fire, the words the human had spoken. Strength was not only killing. Strength was refusing to stop, refusing to abandon, refusing to let go. Her chest tightened with confusion and fear. The human spoke softly, his words meant only for her. If you must, then do it. I will not fight you. His voice was calm, without anger, without blame. He looked at her as though he understood everything, as though he had already forgiven her for what she might do. That broke her more than any command. She had seen fear in the eyes of predators, rage in the eyes of rivals, but never this: calm acceptance, even in the face of death. Her arm froze. The spear felt heavier than ever before, as if it carried the weight of her entire world. The warriors shouted louder, demanding blood. Her leader's glare burned into her, but when she looked into the human's eyes, she saw no weakness, no fear, only strength of a kind she could not explain. Her breath shook, her teeth clenched, and then, in one motion, she turned the spear away from him and toward her own people. Gasps filled the air. The warriors stepped back, their eyes wide with shock and fury. "Traitor!" the leader roared, his voice echoing across the canyon. "You dare betray your blood for a human?" She stood tall, her spear steady now, her voice strong. "He saved me. He fought beside me. He is not weak. If you want his blood, you will take mine first." The silence that followed was louder than thunder. Her people stared at her, their disbelief turning to rage. The leader raised his spear high. "Then you are no longer one of us. You will die with him." The warriors advanced, their footsteps shaking the ground. Her heart raced, but she did not back down. She had made her choice. For the first time in her life, she stood against her own kind. Her body trembled, but not with fear, with resolve. The human stepped beside her, his stone blade in hand. He did not speak, but his presence gave her strength. Together, they faced the circle of spears closing in. She felt a strange calm wash over her, even as death loomed. She was no longer fighting only for herself. She was fighting for something she could not name, something she felt burning inside when she looked at him. The first warrior lunged, and the battle began. She blocked the strike, countered with a slash that forced him back. Another came from the side, but the human moved with precision, dodging and striking with his blade. He fought not with rage, but with focus, each movement sharp, efficient. She matched him, her spear flashing in the firelight, her blood singing with defiance. They fought side by side, backs against each other, as the warriors pressed in. The clash of weapons filled the air, the cries of rage and the roar of defiance echoing through the canyon. For every strike she made, he was there to cover her. For every move he took, she was there to guard him. It was as if their bodies had learned each other's rhythm in that single desperate fight. But they were outnumbered. The warriors pushed harder, their fury endless. Her arms ached, her breath came in ragged gasps, but still she fought. The human never faltered, his calm presence steady even as blood dripped from small cuts on his arms. She realized then that he would fight to the very end, not for victory, but for her. That thought ignited something inside her, a fire hotter than the lava rivers. The leader himself stepped forward, towering over them, his spear raised for the killing blow. Her body screamed with exhaustion, her grip weak, but she lifted her weapon once more. She would not bow. She would not abandon. She would stand, even if it meant dying beside the human. The moment stretched, the air heavy with the weight of her choice. Her tribe's wrath, her leader's fury, her own pride. All of it clashed within her heart. And as the leader's spear came down, she knew there was no turning back. She had shattered her world, and nothing would ever be the same again. The ground shook as the battle raged, but she and the human could not hold forever. The warriors pressed closer, their spears striking like lightning, their voices filled with rage. She swung her weapon again and again, her arms aching, her body screaming for rest. The human fought silently at her side, his blade flashing in the firelight, his movements sharp and calculated. Yet no matter how many they struck down, more came forward. Their tribe would not forgive, not forget. At last, the human grabbed her wrist and pulled her back. "We cannot win this here," he said, his breath heavy, but his eyes calm. She wanted to argue, to stand and fight until death, but his voice cut through her fury. He was right. They would be surrounded, crushed by numbers. Survival meant escape. Together, they broke through a gap in the circle, forcing their way past the spears and vanishing into the burning forest. The warriors shouted and followed, but the death world itself rose to fight. Poisonous vines lashed out, massive beasts stirred from their dens, storms rumbled across the horizon. The world did not care who was hunter or hunted. It wanted to kill them all. They ran deeper into the wilds, into places even her people feared to enter. The The trees grew twisted and black, their branches dripping with venom. Rivers of boiling water cut across the ground, and the air itself burned with toxins. Her chest tightened as she realized where they were going. This was the Forbidden Land, a place her tribe called the Belly of the World. No one who entered was meant to return. Her legs weakened, her wound throbbed, and still she forced herself forward. The human stayed close, always steady, guiding her when her steps faltered, pulling her out of danger when the ground gave way. She hated how much she needed his help, yet at the same time, she felt something she had never known before: trust. He did not abandon her, even when survival would have been easier without her. When night came, they hid in the roots of a giant dead tree. The human started a small fire, its smoke hidden beneath the thick canopy. He used leaves coated with mud to cover their scent from hunters. She watched, her mind restless. Every action he took showed a kind of strength her people had never valued. Not brute force, not dominance, but cleverness and patience. "Why do you keep protecting me?" she asked suddenly, her voice sharper than she intended. "I slowed you down. I almost got you killed." He looked at her, his eyes calm in the firelight. "Because we are stronger together. Alone, I might not last. Alone, you might not last. But together, we have a chance." The words struck deep. Her people had always taught that strength was only for the individual, that needing others was weakness. Yet here, in the heart of the deadliest place on her world, this human said the opposite, and proved it with every action. She lowered her gaze, her chest tight with conflict. The days that followed were a blur of survival. They crossed rivers that boiled with heat, built rafts from dead branches, and fought off creatures with jaws wide enough to swallow them whole. She saw the human's resourcefulness at every step. When food was scarce, he showed her how to trap smaller beasts with simple snares. When storms rolled across the land, he built shelters from rock and mud that kept them safe. He was not faster or stronger than her, but he adapted to every challenge with a calm that unnerved her. Slowly, she realized something terrifying. She had begun to follow his lead. Without even meaning to, she trusted his judgment, waited for his signals, and relied on his strange, clever ways. Her pride fought against it, but her heart knew the truth. The human was not weak. He was teaching her a new kind of strength, one her people had never understood. One night, as the storm winds howled outside their cave, she spoke again, her voice softer now. "My people will never stop hunting us. They will not forgive me. You should leave me and save yourself." He shook his head. "I told you before, leaving you would make me less human. I don't abandon those who stand beside me." Her throat tightened. She had no answer. For her tribe, mercy was weakness. For him, mercy was strength. For her tribe, loyalty was chains. For him, loyalty was freedom. She lay awake long after he closed his eyes, staring at the fire, her world crumbling piece by piece. The next morning, their hunters found them again. The leader himself stood at the front, his eyes blazing with fury. "You cannot hide from us," he roared. "This land will kill you both, but first we will take your lives." The human rose, his blade in hand, his face calm. She stood beside him, her spear ready, her blood pounding. But this time, something was different. She no longer felt torn between loyalty and defiance. She no longer doubted her choice. For the first time, she knew where she belonged, beside the one who refused to abandon her. The battle erupted, fierce and unforgiving. The warriors struck with rage, but the human's clever traps slowed them. Pits hidden beneath leaves, branches sharpened into spikes, fires set in the right places. Each step her people took turned the land itself into their enemy. She fought with everything she had, her spear flashing, her voice roaring with defiance. Though they were outnumbered, together they held. Step by step, they forced the warriors back, not with brute power, but with will, with cunning, with the strength of two hearts refusing to break. When the last warrior fled into the shadows, the ground was littered with broken weapons and scorch marks. She stood gasping for breath, blood on her hands, but alive. Beside her, the human still stood, his chest rising and falling, his eyes calm. She looked at him, and for the first time in her life, she bowed her head, not in defeat, but in respect. Her people had called her strong. But this man, this human, had shown her what strength truly was. And in that moment, she understood. She was no longer only a death worlder. She was something more, because of him. The night was black and heavy, the air thick with smoke and the smell of blood. She stood beside the human, her body aching from countless battles, her spear shaking in her hand. Her people had gathered one last time, more warriors than before, all carrying the fury of betrayal in their eyes. At their center stood the leader, his armor gleaming with the bones of beasts, his spear raised high. His voice thundered across the canyon. Tonight, it ends. The traitor dies with her human. The human said nothing. He did not shout or threaten. He only looked at the field before them, calm as always, his eyes searching, calculating. She glanced at him, her chest tight. He was wounded, tired, yet he stood as if the entire world could fall on him, and still he would not bend. She had never seen anyone like him. She had never believed such strength existed. The warriors charged, their footsteps shaking the ground. She raised her spear with a roar, ready to meet them. But the human moved first. Instead of charging forward, he set fire to the ground itself. Oil from plants he had gathered earlier burned bright, the flames racing across the field, forcing the warriors to split. He had turned the death world into a weapon, the land itself into his ally. She stared in awe as the chaos spread, the warriors stumbling, their attack broken. But they kept coming. The leader roared, leaping through the fire, his spear aimed for the human's chest. She lunged, blocking the strike, their weapons clashing with a sound like thunder. Pain shot up her arms, but she held. The human stepped beside her, striking with his blade, forcing the leader back. They fought together, 2 against many, their movements in perfect rhythm. Every time she faltered, he was there. Every time he stumbled, she was there. It was as if the world itself had shaped them to fight side by side. The battle raged on, the flames lighting the night. She felt her strength fading, her body screaming for rest, but she refused to fall. The human's words echoed in her mind. Strength was not only about power, but about refusing to stop. She gritted her teeth, standing taller, her strikes sharper. The warriors who had once been her brothers now fell before her, their rage no match for her resolve. At last, only the leader remained. His armor was cracked, his face twisted with fury. He glared at her, his voice like venom. You chose a weakling over your own people. You chose shame. She tightened her grip on her spear, her eyes burning. No, I chose strength, real strength. The leader roared and attacked. The clash shook the air, sparks flying with every strike. He was larger, stronger, his blows heavy enough to shatter stone. But she was faster, sharper, her movements guided by something greater than pride. The human joined her, weaving in and out of the fight, striking where it mattered most. The leader grew desperate, his rage blinding him, and in that moment, she saw her chance. With a cry, she drove her spear forward, piercing through his armor, straight into his chest. His eyes widened, his breath caught, and the great warrior fell to his knees. He looked at her one last time, his voice a whisper. You are no longer one of us. Then he collapsed, his body hitting the ground with a final thud. The battlefield fell silent. The remaining warriors stood frozen, their leader dead before them. None dared move, none dared speak. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons. Some turned and fled into the darkness, unwilling to face her. Others simply stood in silence, their faces pale with shock. For the first time, she felt the weight of what she had done. She had broken her world. She had shattered everything she had been taught. She stood there, her chest heaving, her hands trembling around her spear. Then she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned and saw the human, his eyes calm, his expression steady. No pride, no gloating, only quiet strength. You're free now, he said softly. Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Free. The word felt heavy, strange, powerful. Her people had cast her out, declared her a traitor, but instead of chains, she felt wings. Instead of weakness, she felt something stronger than she had ever known. As dawn broke, the fires burned low, and the battlefield lay in ruins. She and the human walked away together, leaving behind the tribe that had once defined her. Each step was heavy, yet each step carried a strange lightness. She did not know what future waited for them, or if survival was even possible beyond this night. But she knew one thing with certainty: she was no longer the same. Her world had been built on pride, on strength defined only by killing and survival. But that world was shattered, broken beyond repair. In its place stood something new, something fragile but unbreakable. She glanced at the human walking beside her, his face lit by the rising sun. He had shown her a truth her people had never seen. Strength was not in cruelty, but in endurance. Not in abandonment, but in loyalty. Not in fear, but in hope. Her heart ached, but in that ache was something warm. She whispered to herself, her voice soft but steady. The strongest creature of all was human. And as the light of the new day washed over them, she knew that her story and the story of her world would never be the same again.